Hi, folks. Welcome to the Prepared Homestead. This is Travis. Thank you all for stopping by to watch. I know I'm going to talk about something that I have been talking about a lot lately, and some of you probably have gotten tired of it. The reason why I'm talking about it is because there's constantly more news coming out about this very subject. And I hope that if nothing else, I can wake up one or two more people to realize that we are facing a crisis that this nation has never faced before, and that is a real food crisis. Food prices that will probably be higher than any of you can dream of paying for food, and very possible real food shortages. Already hearing reports from people, personal reports from people, that they're really starting to struggle to pay for the groceries. People that are kind of living right at the edge of their means, and they're going to the grocery store and they're having to pay $50 and $60 and $70 more for their groceries. And for a lot of you, that may not sound like a big deal, but for many people, that little bit of increase is a lot, and it's really starting to hurt people. And folks, it's not going to get any better. Whether or not there is an actual organized effort to do this, which of course that's my belief, or it's just happening because we're just in a run of bad luck. The fact is that this is really happening, and it's going to start affecting us more and more, and we need to get serious, all of us, not just with stocking up on food. That's certainly what you need to do, because while prices are going up right now, they haven't hit their peak. So you certainly need to be stocking up, but you also need to be producing your own food. You need to be getting out there this year and putting out as much food as possible. Even if you've never done it, maybe you don't have a lot of experience, maybe you don't have a lot of space. It doesn't matter. You need to produce as much food as you possibly can. And if you have zero space whatsoever, put it in planters, or look into community gardens that could possibly be in your area, that you could contribute the work and reap some of the gain. Because I'm telling you, I would guess that come this fall, it's going to start getting real bad. And most of the people that I've listened to say that this year's going to be bad, but it's going to be way worse next year. And so, folks, you need to get out there and get serious about prepping up, getting your food stocked up, and getting your gardens out there and producing as much food as possible. Since I'm on the subject of food, I want to go ahead and mention a company that I have worked with quite a bit, and a lot of people really like them, and that's Patriots Supply. There's a link down in the description below that you can go to and find out their long-term emergency food stuff. They're doing their very best to keep their prices as low as possible right now, which is difficult with all the prices of food that's gone up, and then just the materials that they use to package it. All that's gone up too. But if you're looking for long-term food storage, that's one of the best places to go. Patriots Supply. You can go down to the link below, or you can just go to preparewithtravis.com. So, we've talked about these mysterious food plants and processing plants and warehouses that have caught fire, or planes have crashed into them, or there's been something, explosions. There's all kinds of stuff, and of course the mainstream media is getting out there right now, and they're trying to cover their bases, and they're letting everybody know that, well, yeah, they really are happening. No one's denying that this is happening, but they're telling everyone it's not a conspiracy. I'm seeing the fact check warnings on different social media websites. Every time someone posts something about it, there's a little fact check warning that it's just a conspiracy, that this is all being, an organized effort, that this is all being done on purpose. And when the fact checkers get out there and they start saying that, it usually makes me want to look the opposite direction that they're trying to point me. Because if they're trying to distract you by saying that it's not true, that's probably a good reason to kind of look at it and try to figure out for yourself. And the fact is it keeps happening. Before I tell you any more, I have been personally looking back in recent years just to see if this is just a normal thing that no one has noticed, or if there really is something different going on. And in fact, there are food processing plants and warehouses and stuff that catch fire every year. And I can't say for certain that I have researched every possible one of them, but I looked back the last few years, 2020, 19, 18, 17, and on average, I was finding usually between 5, 6, and 7 a year by looking through the news that happened. But in the last 6 months or so, we're getting pretty close, by my numbers, to around 30 that's happened in the last 6 months, and just in the last couple of months, between 18 and 20 or so, depending on what count you look at. But it's still happening. Just in the last few days, there's been three more plants, farms, processing, whatever, have caught fire and burned just in the last few days. One was a chicken farm, caught fire, burned to the ground. Another one was a food processing plant in Fresno, and then also a Purdue Farms facility caught fire and burned. So it's still going on. And even if you believe that this is all just coincidental, folks, it's a big deal. While there are a lot of food processing plants all over the place, every time one of these burn to the ground, it's just another dent, another crack in the system. And it's starting to add up because it's starting to be quite a few of them. And you can't, it's hard to find any kind of numbers on how many of these happen. The only numbers I found that there were on average of 1,200 warehouse fires a year, but that's all types of production and warehouses. I couldn't find any numbers on an average of actual food processing plants every year. And it just seems like a really strange coincidence that this is happening while we're dealing with a lot of problems in our food supply. Michigan, the local news up in Michigan, they're talking about the possibility of food shortages up there because the farmers in Michigan are worried because they can't get enough fertilizer. They can't get it. And what they can get, it's so expensive that they can't afford it. So if they're in this, kind of conundrum here, they want to put the fertilizer out there and they either, number one, can't find it, or some of the farmers can get it. They have access to it, but it's so outrageously priced that if they purchase it, they're not going to make any money. I mean, in the end, farming is just like any other business. The farmers do it so that they can make money. They're not doing it for a charity. And if they can't make any money off of their crops because their cost of doing business has become so high, then they're not going to put fertilizer. And so either way, there's lots and lots of farmland that's not getting fertilized this year. And there's a big worry that the harvest may not be nearly as much as what we need. I don't like chemical fertilizers. We don't put anything like that on our property, and I really wish that everything was chemical free. But the fact is that that's what we have. And you can't just yank that rug right out from underneath a system that's highly dependent upon all this fertilizers and herbicides and other chemicals to produce enough food to feed everyone. It's great in some ways that it's not being used, but in other ways, the chances of there not being enough food produced, because a lot of the varieties and the seeds and stuff that they are using, as you all know, are genetically modified to specifically work with these chemicals, and not putting them on. They're not. It's not like maybe some of you that plant heirloom varieties in your gardens that are a little bit more capable of handling, bugs or drought or, any type of other diseases, because they're a little hardier. They're heirloom. These plants are not like that. A lot of these crops that are planted, they have to have these chemicals to survive, and they're just not getting them this year. The problem with the food just keeps going and going, though. It's not just the fire. It's not just the fertilizer, it's also the drought and the excessive rain. And I've talked about that quite a bit lately. Out west, and down in the Southwest, they're experiencing the worst drought ever. If you don't believe me, go back and watch the video I did a couple of days ago. It was a pretty well documented video on how bad the drought is. But the rest of the country that's not experiencing drought is experiencing excessive rain. To the point that they can't get any crops in the ground. Even here, we've had a real hard time getting stuff planted. And, I finally told my wife, I said, I'm just going to hold off. We have a long enough growing season here that I don't have to push it too much, and there's no point in trying to get stuff in the ground only for it to drown because of all this excessive rain that we've had. Right now, if you went out to my garden, you could probably float a canoe in it. So there's just no point in it, and that's fine for us. But for major crops that are very dependent upon being done at a certain time of the year, that could really cause a shortage in the end, that they're not able to get the harvest that they want to, that they need to, because they're not able to plant at a certain time. And so that's happening. But we're also dealing with this whole bird flu stuff, which, maybe it's legitimate, maybe it's real, but it also seems pretty ridiculous because they're calling millions and millions of chickens over sometimes just one positive a case. Here's one here. This egg factory, they euthanized 5.3 million chickens, 5.3 million hens. And they laid off 200 workers, which indicates that they're not coming back. It's not like they're planning on, well, we're going to get rid of all these hens and then get some new chickens and keep going. They've laid off around 200 workers, and they euthanized 5.3 million chickens because they had one positive case. One positive case. I get it. It can spread if it's legitimate, but the fact is this is happening a lot. And we're up to around 30 million chickens nationwide that's been killed due to this supposed bird flu, which is getting close to the record. There was a bird flu, I believe it was the one back in the 90s, that they ended up killing off about 50 million birds because of it. So we're getting close to that. And that's not the only thing. I was reading this one here. This was down in Georgia just a few days ago. There was a big chicken recall. 15 tons of processed chicken was recalled and destroyed. 15 tons. Now you could say, we produce way more than that every year nationwide. Yes, we do. Absolutely, we do. But it's just one more crack in the system, folks. There's already talk. It's not just talk. It's already happening. It's already happening in some places where they're experiencing these extreme droughts, where they're culling herds. This is happening all over. I spoke with a farmer just a couple of days ago, one of the local farmers around here. And this guy's farmed his entire life. He's multiple generation farmer. He knows what he's doing. And he told me, he said, I have a feeling that by September, we're going to start seeing a lot of farms have to cull their herds. He said, because they're just not going to be able to feed them. He said, and I'm not talking about, what's going on down in, out west where they're experiencing the drought. He says, I'm talking about here, places that aren't experiencing the drought. He said, these farmers aren't going to be able to afford to feed their herds. They're not going to be able to afford to feed them all winter long. He said, you're going to see the market. He said, I predict come about September. He said, you're going to see the market being flooded with beef. Now, that doesn't necessarily mean that beef prices are going to go down, because as we've seen, it doesn't matter how much beef is out there. The prices just seem to be high. It's that the farmers aren't making the money. The beef, cattle farmers aren't making it. All the money's being made at the higher levels at the processing end. The fact is that's just that much less food. There may be a gluttony of beef for a little while, but if they're calling off too many, too much of the herd, that means that long term it's going to be a lot less, which is all part of this Great Reset plan anyways. They want to get us off beef. You've all seen this stuff. You'll only eat beef, you only eat meat just once in a while. It'll be just a small amount every once in a while, because you're going to be eating lots and lots of bugs, right? That's what they tell us. I spoke to another guy here locally. I actually found out he watches the channel, and he owns a big scrapyard, metal scrapyard. And he told me, he said, I can always tell when hard times are happening. He said, because we start getting a lot of business. He said, think about it. He said, out here in the farmland and stuff, and this farming communities, he said, when people start having hard times, they start scrapping as much as they can to get as much money out of the stuff that they have laying around. He says, our scrapyard is packed full. He said, it's just constantly. He said, even some of these little small towns, he said, they're bringing in all kinds of stuff to scrap. He said, because people are running out of money. They're feeling it, the tightening down. They're feeling the squeeze. And he said, we're seeing a lot right now. He said, our business is booming. He said, because we're getting so much in. He said, and I can always tell that happens right at the start of when tough times began. And this guy, he's an older fella, and he said he's been doing it his whole life, so he would know. This is what we're talking about, folks. This is the beginning. You know, we've been, all of you probably heard it too. You hear it on the news. Oh, we could be heading into a recession. We might. Well, there's a possible chance. Whatever. We already all know we're already in a recession. We've been in a recession for a while. Maybe not all the indicator numbers line up, but you and I that are out here on the streets buying the groceries and paying the bills and living the real life, we all know that we've been experiencing a recession for a while, and it's only getting worse. And so we're going to probably quickly jump from a recession to the next thing, a depression, and who knows, maybe even some hyperinflation. That things are not going good. And I can't really find any too much good news to report when it comes to this. And so I feel bad about talking about this all the time in the sense that I don't want to sound like some doomsdayer. But the fact is it's happening, folks, and we've got to get serious. Maybe doing these videos, you can wake up some of your loved ones, your neighbors, your friends, your family. But if nothing else, maybe it'll wake you up a little bit, and maybe you'll realize that I got to get serious about this. I've been doing it for a while, but boy, I gotta hunker down and get, make it a real serious thing, because I think the time clock is ticking. I'm not saying it's going to happen next week or maybe even next month, but I don't think we have a whole long time before it starts getting really bad. I would guess things are going to start really hurting people by this fall and throughout the winter and into next year. You'll probably start feeling it soon. Many of you already are. I mean, we all already are feeling the price increases, but I'd say at least by the summertime, you're going to start really noticing it. But by the fall, it's probably going to start hurting. Folks, get stocked up. I mean, even the most positive reports, even the most, if you look at our own government leaders, they're warning people that there's a hard times coming, warning people that the food prices are going to continue to go up for a while. They're warning that inflation's going to go up for a while. They're warning that shortages and things like that are going to happen. So don't get caught just lying down on this, folks. It's a very real thing, and you don't want to be caught in that place where you're having to actually fight for your food or really struggling for food, because with all the violence that's been going on and the recent things that are happening that are increasing the tensions and the chaos in this country, once all those people that are out there protesting because of a Supreme Court decision start getting hungry and they can't afford it, then they're really gonna start causing a ruckus. You get out there with an empty belly and you don't know when your next meal's going to come from, that's when humanity starts losing its civility. So don't get caught in that kind of place. Folks, get your houses in order. Prepare yourselves mentally, physically, and spiritually. Thanks for watching, and I'll catch you in the next video.